In this lesson, we're going to look at how to easily edit the properties of an array. Now, at the end of the last lesson, we had gone and created this array as one of the 3 methods for creating window frames and screens, as is in our case here. Now, when it comes to design, there will inevitably be changes and modifications made along the way. So it really helps for you to set up a workflow that allows you to make those changes without losing time every single time you have to make an edit. So with regards to blocks, we've already seen how that is done, where we've set up the door to have the wipeout and to be editable as a block so that we don't have to redo the walls underneath and we don't have to change the other doors. So everything basically adapts and updates according to what we do to one of them. The same thing with a column. We've basically set that up to be editable so that each of them will update. While the array has very similar functions programmed into it. Now, I want to just point you to a few different methods that you can access the properties of the arrays, and you can actually go and change individual properties settings of those arrays to your heart's content. So the one thing that you can do is to type ARRAY, and you'll see that you get a list of array related actions that you can do. The one that we're going to use is array edit. You can of course type the entire thing, or you can pull up the small shortcut that you can actually have on your screen. So for example, I can go to array edit and I can keep this on my screen as a little toolbar, and that will allow me to easily access the array edit, which is this button over here. So in any case, we're going to go array edit and we're going to select the array, which is this line of screens. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is that with these screens over here, they quite neatly line up to the window frame. So there would be one lining up to every window frame and one screen in the middle. But this one seems to be slightly out of alignment. So it's a typical example where you want to just go and tweak the number of arrayed objects that you have that alignment being similar to the other cases. So what you can do now is you actually have the array selected and you are in array edit. So you have the possibility of going through each of these different properties and making those changes. So if we click on items, we can change that number 20 to number 19, and you can see that immediately you have now reduced those amount of items to only 19. Now that exact same thing is accessible if you either double click on the array. You can see that you have a short list of properties here that you can access. It's not as extensive as the one that we looked at the bottom, but you can definitely change the number of items. So that is the quickest way if you don't want to type in array edit, or if you don't want to have that little shortcut on your screen. The other thing you can do is to use the control1 method, where you get your list of properties that is also more extensive than just double clicking. And here you see the number of items. You can also change whether it's divide or measure. You can have a look at the distance between the items and a few other properties as well. So with all of these array editing tools, you can go and change those main properties. Now what happens if you want to change one of the items, or if you want to change the object that is being distributed across the array? Just like with the doors and the columns that are set up to be instanced, the array has that same thing. So what we can do in this case is that you can go into your array properties, so array edit, and you can click on that array and click on source, and that will then allow you to click one of the objects, and you can then manipulate and modify that array. So for example, if you want to set up a center point, or a, let's say, a rotation object to make it look like the screen is going to be rotated around this point, and let's say that we want to now chamfer, so CHA, so we want to now chamfer this edge. So I'm just going to go into chamfer, and I'm going to choose the distance, let's say 10 millimeters and 10 millimeters. And we can now go and chamfer these edges. And once you're done with all those edits, you can basically click on save, and it will basically update that across your entire array. So this is a wonderful technique that you can use to go and have an entire array of objects being basically programmable by the single one, just like the columns and the doors. The last thing I'd like to show you is, even though you have an array and when you click on it you have the entire array being selected, if you press Control on your keyboard, it allows you to go and manipulate one of those objects. So you can either move it around, you can rotate it, and basically treat it as a separate object. The rest of the array will still work as a group though. So all these different techniques allow you to have somewhat a good amount of flexibility when it comes to creating your arrays, and it'll give you the possibility of updating without having to redo the entire thing from scratch. So that was a lesson just about editing arrays. The next one we will look at filling in some of the details, and also how to edit some of the other parts of the building. For example, I noticed that it would help us to change the spacing of these columns and just to align it and start working with the facade and the doors of this lounge area here. So that's what we're going to look at in the next lesson.